The Flower Class Corvette may have been a tiny warship, but it was perhaps the most successful escort ever built. Universally feared by the German High Command, this little warship played a huge role in winning the Second World War. The 250 ships of this class called the icy waters of the North Atlantic their hunting grounds, where they became the principal maritime weapons defending transports from Hitler's U-boats. By keeping these shipping lanes open, the Flower Class's impact was undeniable. The Flower Class Corvette was born out of necessity. Following the Munich Agreement of 1938, where Germany was given the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia, Britain's Admiralty was convinced that war with Germany was inevitable. The Royal Navy, understanding that supplies from North America would be vital in any coming struggle, needed a ship that could guard shipping convoys. The British government turned to Middlesbrough shipbuilders Smith's Dock Company to design an inexpensive, easy-to-produce escort ship for immediate emergency production. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Canada's small yet professional navy also saw the looming threat of war and sought to expand its fleet quickly. Canadian shipbuilders lacked the expertise to build sophisticated warships, so a simple and stout design was required. The Corvette emerged as a perfect solution that would meet the needs of both the British and Canadian fleets. The Flower was the first modern corvette the world had ever seen. The term corvette is derived from the French word for sloop, a name suggested by Winston Churchill, who, while filling the role of First Lord of the Admiralty, remembered such a ship from the days of fighting sail. The modern corvettes would be light, nimble ships with enough armament to strike fear into any submariner's heart. Vessels in the Flower class were named after types of flowers, such as HMS Gladiolus and HMS Tulip. The corvette's odd naming convention also retained an element of British cheekiness. It was thought that one of Hitler's sea wolves, U-boats, having been destroyed by a vessel named for a flower, would be a public relations victory in Britain and an embarrassment to the Nazis. Conversely, Canadian Flower-class vessels primarily assumed the names of Canadian cities and towns as a means to instill national pride and forge a connection between the population and the country's relatively young navy. However, there were notable exceptions to this naming convention for Canadian corvettes built in British yards and initially intended for the Royal Navy, such as HMCS Snowbury. The Flower Class Corvette was a mere 205 feet long, 33 feet in the beam, with a 12-foot draft. In general appearance, the Canadian and British corvettes were nearly indistinguishable. The hull was divided into 3 sections. Accommodations were primarily in the forward third of the ship. The midship section contained machinery and engineering spaces, while the aft section contained additional accommodations, storage for provisions, and steering gear. The design of Flower-class corvettes was deliberately simple, allowing for quick production in smaller shipyards, such that larger, more experienced shipyards could focus on manufacturing larger, more advanced warships. Moreover, the simplicity of the corvette allowed for straightforward operation by the green sailors who would crew them. The Flower class was lightly armed. She employed a single 102 mm gun positioned on the forecastle, 140 mm pom-pom gun aft, and anti-aircraft machine guns. The Canadian corvettes were also outfitted with a series of 303 Lewis guns and 50 caliber Browning machine guns. The corvette's most feared weapon, however, was her depth charges, dropped from traps in the stern and thrown by mortars at the waist. In later vessels, the Hedgehog projector was installed to increase the range at which depth charges could be deployed, making the corvette a more formidable adversary against German U-boats. Later vessels would also be armed with almost double the amount of anti-aircraft weaponry. which gave it a more viable defense against German bombers. Life inside a corvette was cold and wet. The rounded hulls caused the ships to ride on top of the seas rather than dig into the waves like a destroyer's hull. The design had merits, allowing the relatively small vessel to operate in extreme seas, although the bobbing and corkscrewing motions that resulted took its toll on the ship's companies. To make matters worse, the vessels were cramped and consistently wet, making comfortable living below decks a difficult affair as water made its way into every compartment of the boat, soaking skip and sailor alike. This ship's ability to tough out rough seas while still staying maneuverable made them the premier choice for rescuing survivors of plane crashes and ship sinkings. The HMCS Morden was called the champion survivor carrier in the entire Allied naval forces, as she rescued 357 people between the summer of 1942 and the spring of 1943. The fact that a simple ship could perform these rescue duties cleared up capital ships to perform more essential tasks and kept them safe from prowling wolf packs. The corvette was a workhorse used to defend ports, sweep for mines, escort convoys, provide limited defense against air attack, and, crucially, hunt and destroy submarines. She was an excellent seakeeper and highly maneuverable due to her small size. Author James Brune writes that she could turn on a dime. She was the only Allied warship with a turning radius tighter than that of a U-boat, and in consequence, she was the master of the U-boat in maneuvering duels that would foil any other surface escort. The Flower Class Corvette is officially credited with sinking 53 U-boats, 49 from Germany and 4 from Italy. The true number is likely quite a bit higher, as battle credits for U-boat sinkings are difficult to calculate. Using the 53 boat number, we can calculate that this tiny, cheap vessel was responsible for sinking nearly 10% of all non-scuttled U-boats sunk in the Second World War. If you enjoyed this story, we would love it if you gave it a thumbs up and subscribed. If you have any questions or know anything else you'd like to share, please leave it in the comments below. We will be actively responding to all of them. Thanks for watching, and we hope you click back soon.